news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. And there's your closing bell for this Tuesday on Wall Street, where tech stocks pushed the S&P to a 9-day winning run, and a revival of the AI trade drove momentum. We have record highs, new record highs now across the board. Let's bring you those closing numbers. We do it each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 10 points. NASDAQ gained 7. The Dow gained 229 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.45%. The 2-year yield at 4.04%. WTI crude now right around $93 a barrel, and Brent crude around $96 a barrel. Bitcoin still lower now, nearly 6% lower, around $67,000. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon says the boom we're seeing in the equity markets now is being driven by an appetite for profit, outweighing fears about economic disruption and inflation risks.
We are definitely in a moment where there's more greed than there is fear. That's one of the reasons why people that need this capital are coming to the markets. If you're capital consumptive and it's available, take the capital.
Solomon made the remarks at the Economic Club of New York. President Trump's so-called anti-weaponization fund was put on hold by the courts. The audit immunity that goes with it appears to be moving forward. Bloomberg's Jeff Mason.
Very hard to believe that he would walk away from that part of the deal, and it doesn't sound like he is. The question is whether or not it will be challenged in court, or whether the judge who reopened this case will look at that piece too, or if it's just really a focus on this fund.
Sources tell Bloomberg officials plan to continue with the part of the agreement which prevents the government from probing President Trump's past tax filings, including those of his businesses. The president has just filled a big hole in his cabinet, naming Bill Pulte as acting director of national intelligence. He announced it on social media and says Pulte will stay in his current post as head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency and chair of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall has more.
He has led some of the administration's staunchest criticism when it comes to the Federal Reserve, and also led that probe of alleged mortgage fraud by Fed Governor Lisa Cook.
Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall reports Pulte lacks military and intelligence community experience as housing chief. He succeeds Tulsi Gabbard, who announced she'll step down at the end of the month. President Trump says he thinks the U.S. can reach an interim peace deal with Iran, with discussions continuing at what he calls a rapid pace. The president posting on social media, it is false to say that Iran and the U.S. ever stopped talking. Iran has insisted on a ceasefire in Lebanon being part of the Memorandum of Understanding with the U.S. Elisa Ewers is with the Council on Foreign Relations.
It's becoming increasingly difficult to keep Lebanon separate from these broader Iran talks. The president is struggling with how to manage for that demand and not risk losing the possibility of an agreement.
Council on Foreign Relations senior fellow Elisa Ewers on Bloomberg's Balance of Power. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the Senate Foreign Relations panel Iran has mined large parts of the Strait of Hormuz.
They're firing on commercial ships, and they've mined large segments of Hormuz international waters. And so the blockade is only against Iranian ships. And it's very simple. The notion is, if no one's ships are going to get out, then Iran's ships aren't going to get out either.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio telling lawmakers the U.S. will not give Iran sanctions relief in exchange for reopening the strait. Former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says since he left that job 2 years ago, tensions among NATO allies are getting worse.
The tensions between Europe and North America and the United States are even stronger and more difficult to manage.
Jens Stoltenberg spoke at a Bloomberg Newsmakers event in Oslo. You can catch that full conversation on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. SpaceX looking to pay ultra-low fees for one of the biggest initial public offerings of all time. Bloomberg News has learned Elon Musk's rocket and AI company is negotiating to pay less than 0.75% for the $75 billion it plans to raise in its IPO. Meanwhile, Bloomberg has learned more than 1,000 current and former SpaceX employees are banding together to negotiate with wealth management firms for better pricing and access to financial products ahead of the IPO. The White House says the president has signed an executive order directing U.S. agencies to work with artificial intelligence companies to protect networks from AI-enabled cyber attacks. It would establish a cybersecurity clearinghouse to coordinate and fix software vulnerabilities. The order stops short of requiring mandatory tests. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.